Our project team has had the opportunity to engage with some local community organizations and businesses, and tonight we're excited to share where we are at in the project with all of you. We appreciate you guys taking the time to participate in this presentation and this project and to provide your valuable insight. For anyone who may need Spanish interpretation, I know we've announced it a few times, but please see Naomi right over there. We anticipate the project or the presentation is going to take about 30 minutes, and then we will open it up to questions. During the question and answer session, we ask anyone who has a question to please sign up. You will be given a number, and when your number is called, you can approach the microphone. Francine will have it over there, and you can ask your question. If you do not want to ask your question publicly, there will be some time after the Q&A for you to ask any of our presenters any questions. If you have any friends or family who could not attend tonight, we are recording the presentation, and it'll be available on our website as soon as tomorrow. All right, on the agenda tonight, we will be giving you an overview of the project, some information on the background and schedule of the project, our current design concept, and the aesthetic process. And then we'll talk through how you guys can stay engaged during the project. And then we'll open it up to any questions. I want to take a quick moment for our presenters to introduce themselves. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Adriana Day, and I'm going to help facilitate this presentation tonight. I'm a consultant working with the public involvement team for this project, and I'm excited to see such a great turnout tonight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Clark. I'm with the New Mexico DOT District 3 here in Albuquerque. I'm the project development engineer for this project. Thanks for everyone coming out tonight, taking time out.
My name is Mike Worrell. I'm with Horrocks, and I am the project manager for the consultant team. I'm working for Greg. We did not coordinate on dress tonight, but he has impeccably good taste, okay?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alonso Martinez. I'm an engineer, part of the consultant team. I'm excited to see the turnout today and excited to share where we are today.
Thank you all. I'm going to hand things over to Mike to get started on the project overview.
The project is essentially a reconstruction of the I-25 corridor, starting at the north edge of Sunport Boulevard and continuing through the Gibson interchange and ending at the south side of Cesar Chavez, Avenida Cesar Chavez. And it includes reconstruction of the interstate itself, includes a lot of work and reconfiguration and reconstruction of the ramps on and off the freeway, and it includes a reconstruction of the interchange at Gibson itself, as well as enough reconstruction of Gibson in order to get it to connect appropriately to the rest of the street. So I think that's kind of the overview. It includes, in addition to, and I've been told this already, to make sure that I don't give short shrift to active transportation modes, but it'll include improvements to the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, particularly along Gibson itself, and get into more detail in a second.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mike and Adriana. For those of you that are familiar, what's that? Oh, we're on slide 12? Yeah. Yeah, so the NIMDOT, it follows a detailed process to study corridors that may be in need of transportation improvements, such as this I-25 Gibson project. A little bit of history. Back in 2014, the department completed the first study called Phase 1A, which identified a purpose and need for the broader corridor. Following that, the DOT completed a Phase 1B study that identified preferred alternatives for the overall corridor. Those are two planning documents that the department follows, and we follow the NEPA process when doing so. The key improvements Mike outlined are the preferred alternative for this section. The key improvements Mike outlined, this project is now in phase 1C. So we completed the 1B study. Now we're moving into the 1C phase of it, which is to review environmental impacts and documentation. While also working on phase 1D, which is the preliminary design. So we'll complete the phase 1C and then move into 1D. Both of these completed reports for phase 1A and 1B are on the project website too, and in case anybody wants to access it, they're both available. The Gibson Boulevard interchange was built in the 1960s. And due to its age, the infrastructure needs to be replaced and is a priority for the NIMDOT. Short-term improvements have been completed recently to keep the bridge safe, but they are in need for full reconstruction to meet new design standards. Additionally, reconstructing this interchange to improve travel time both now and in the future is a main focus. When Mike reviews the design concept in more detail, you will see some key features that will tackle this. And as for now, I'm going to hand it back to Mike to talk through this current project and how it's being delivered. Thank you.
All right. As Greg mentioned, the I-25 corridor has been studied for the whole length from Isleta up to I-40. So the reason that this particular section is rising to the top as far as priorities for the department is really the condition of the bridges of I-25 over top of Gibson himself. Much of this stuff was built the year I was born, so it's old. And bridges at that time were not built to last this long. So what's happening is that there are rehabilitations that are done and repairs that are done of the bridges. For all of you that drove the highway earlier this year, you experienced some rehab work on the inside of the Cesar Chavez bridges. There's been similar type work done on the Gibson bridges. But what the department is experiencing is those retrofits or those rehabilitations are kind of having diminishing returns. And so they're having to do them more frequently, and it's costing more, and just diminishing returns, and it's just time to replace them. That's kind of the case for the entire infrastructure, whether you're talking about the pavement or the pipes or all of that as well. So it's just reached the point where it's old enough and needs replacement. So as we replace that, the department is needing to meet the needs of the traveling public in all the modes, both now and in the future. We only get a chance at this every several decades. So when we do it, we're going to make sure that we meet the needs for the future. That includes traffic operations. That includes safety associated with that, and it also includes active transportation modes, bicycles and pedestrian, being able to use Gibson as well. This project will be done using a little bit different delivery method than what the department typically does. For those of you who have been paying attention to some of the work and some of the progress going on the other side of I-40, the department is implementing a design-build project. And if that doesn't make sense, basically what that means is that the department will solicit and for design-build proposals from proposing teams, and then they will hire a single team to both perform the design, the final design of the project, as well as the construction of it. Our role is really to get the project ready for that, and then help the department prepare all the early studies, all of the environmental evaluations, and then also prepare a set of what we call a request for proposal for design build, but that really includes all of the contract requirements that a design build team would then perform the work under. So that's what our role is right now, is getting that ready. The schedule is, we got started on our work not quite a year ago now, and we've been basically since that time gathering a lot of data. We've been surveying the area, We've been gathering traffic information, traffic data. We've been performing environmental inventories. We've been analyzing drainage configurations, doing borings of the subsurface soil conditions, those sort of things. And that's what we've been doing since then. We have, in the last few months, started to prepare what we call a preliminary engineering concept. And this is a design. It may not be exactly what's ultimately built. We're kind of early in the process, but this is a preliminary engineering concept that's serving as the basis for us to move forward and help us prepare those documents and procurement documents and requests for proposal for design build. Right now, from this meeting, we will take and use the information, the input we received tonight from all of you, and then this public comment period, we'll be gathering comment from you over the next month. So we hope you can, as you think of things, continue to give us input through the website or through comment forms, and there's a bunch of that around. So we will take this input and then refine that preliminary engineering concept. We'll refine what we know about the project. We'll refine our expectations of it. We'll move on and perform those and complete those environmental studies based on that, and then we will come back to you later in the year for another meeting with much more information, much more refinement, and much more detail. After that, our plan is to have a design build request for proposal released for advertisement come early fall of 2025. I always have to do the math in my head, sorry. So a little over a year from now, year and 6 months from now, we will be releasing that. And we expect to select a design build team sometime in 2026. And then we expect construction to probably start sometime in 2027. Just a little bit of information on why that is. So I mentioned the project up north of I-40 in the Comanche-Montgomery area of I-25. That's starting construction later this year, late July. We expect to start into that. The construction time frame will be just short of 3 years, and we'll be concluding sometime in early 2027. As you can imagine, to have 2 projects of that magnitude would be a bit of a mess for traffic particularly. So we don't want to have 2 of those going on at once. So this project would not go under construction until that one's complete. So we wouldn't expect this to start until 2027. That make sense? All right. I'm going to describe a little bit of the elements of the design concept, and preliminary engineering concept. And keep in mind that we're in the early stages. There's still room for refinement, and we plan to do that as we move forward from this. If we go to the next slide, mention that the project starts just north of Sunport Boulevard. It will include some work to the ramps on the north side of Sunport Boulevard, and then it will include reconstruction of the freeway itself. Ultimately, the planning studies that are in place have identified a need for 4 travel lanes in each direction on mainline I-25. You can imagine there won't be 4 lanes of travel either north or south of this when this is open. Sorry, I'm going to take a drink of water. So we'll be building the ultimate width, but it will probably not necessarily be striped accordingly until those connections are made on either the north or south side. But we will be building the ultimate width of what that would be. And then as we go north, new ramps, new configuration of off-ramps and on-ramp from Gibson itself. The interchange will be reconfigured, so the loop ramps that exist today will no longer exist. In the future, it'll be more of a modern design to meet the needs of the traffic and safety issues that have arisen. And so those will be replaced with a more conventional tight diamond type interchange, if that makes sense. And then as you go to the next slide, on the north end, that reconstruction of the main line will continue all the way up to the south side of Avenida Cesar Chavez, but it doesn't include the reconstruction of that interchange itself. It will include new ramp configurations, and it'll include what we refer to as braided ramps, and it's a bit jargony, but if I can give you an example, the example I always use, if people are familiar with the off-ramp on the north end of town going to San Antonio, it goes over the top of the on-ramp from San Mateo, that's a braided ramp. So one going over top of the other. Due to the increasing traffic that we're anticipating along the highway and then using those ramps on and off, and the proximity of how close those two interchanges are together, we anticipate that without the braided ramps, we'd start to have traffic issues with the weaving movements. And I know everyone knows what I'm talking about when I talk about weaving movements and having to negotiate through traffic coming on and off. We expect that will happen on the northbound direction as well as the southbound direction, be braided ramps on both sides. Next slide. For Gibson itself, the department's priority is really to rebuild enough of Gibson to make it connect up in a functional way to the existing roadway. And so making those connections all work. However, we are also including more formal active transportation facility in the form of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. In the city's bicycle pedestrian plan, they include along Gibson having a raised sidewalk as well as what they call a buffered bike lane, right? So the buffered bike lane basically has a little bit of a space between the bike lane and the traffic lane itself. That's what their recommendation is going to be for along Gibson. However, under the interchange or through the interchange itself, and this is specific feedback we received from much of the bike community, is that they would prefer that both the bicycle and pedestrians be behind a concrete barrier through the interchange itself so that there is a physical divide between the traffic and the pedestrians and bicyclists. So that's what we're proposing and planning to do through that. And we are planning that on both sides of Gibson. And then in our preliminary engineering concept, we show a similar transition to connect to the existing roadway west of I-25. The department is hoping not to rebuild all of Gibson all the way to Broadway, but it is a very tight corridor between the properties on either side. The right-of-way is relatively narrow, and we'd just as soon not disrupt the adjacent businesses in that. So we'd like to leave the curb and gutter in the place it is as much as we possibly can. However, we're also trying to fit in those bicycle facilities and the sidewalks so that we continue those all the way to Broadway. So what our preliminary engineering concept shows, and this has not been finally decided, but it is for consideration, is to reduce the number of lanes on Gibson in that section from 3 through lanes in each direction to 2. We've looked preliminarily at the traffic, and we think that should function. However, those sorts of decisions are never without discussion. So we're just basically putting it out there to the universe, and hopefully we receive some feedback on that tonight. But by making that change, we provide enough room for that buffered bike lane and that separation on the west end of the project area. Next slide. There is a law in transportation. Think back to the 1950s and 60s for those of you that were around. Those were the early days of the interstate highway system. And in the early years of building that, a lot of states found it easier to go through parks and old neighborhoods. So in 1966, as a part of the law reauthorizing transportation funding, they wrote a provision that said that the Federal Highway Administration has to more fully consider effects to both older neighborhoods i.e. cultural resources or historic resources, and or public recreation facilities. That law, we refer to it as 4F. That's just the name of the paragraph in that law. But if you hear about 4F, that's what that's talking about. It basically requires the Federal Highway Administration, before they decide to build a surface transportation project, if it involves the impacts to either public recreation facilities or cultural resources or historic resources, that the Federal Highway Administration has to do due diligence to make sure that those effects are justified. So that's referred to as 4F. The reason I'm bringing it up here is Dennis Chavez Park is a public park, and it is a public recreation resource. So it falls under that paragraph 4F for consideration, which means that the Federal Highway Administration, before any impacts can be made to that park as a consequence of this project, we have to study that fully, and then Federal Highway Administration analyzes our analysis to make sure we followed the law. So what we want to hear is any input on how you use the park, your understanding of the park, and how this proposal might affect that. So that's why we bring that up. So then I'll try not to geek out and mention acronyms like 4F for the rest of the night. And I think with that, I get to turn it over to Alonzo.
Thanks, Mike. So for this project, we are coordinating closely with the city of Albuquerque to make sure that our project aligns with the future corridor plans. In terms of active transportation, at this moment, the project has two elements of that. So we are currently proposing within the interchange to have a barrier-separated shared use path that provides safety for all users. Away from the interchange along Gibson, like Mike mentioned, we are proposing a buffered bike lane with an adjacent raised sidewalk. We're still coordinating with the city to fine-tune requirements for separation and width, and we anticipate that this part of the design to develop further with those discussions. We want to make sure that this project moves forward and aligns itself with the current updated bike plan from the city of Albuquerque that is currently in the works. There's room for refinement on these elements, so we would like to hear any input you may have. There's a area in your comment forms this evening. If you care to provide any feedback, please do so. Next slide. So moving on to the aesthetic process. It is important to NMDOT and the consultant team that we design and build contextually appropriate structures. The NMDOT wants to ensure that while the project is providing safe and efficient transportation system, that improvements honor the local heritage, beauty, and setting. In order to accomplish this, we are using a process to solicit local artists. We are using a platform called Call for Entry, or short, CAFE. The solicitation is currently live, and it will be closing March 11th. If you are a local artist and you care to have more information, we have provided a link to this solicitation on our I-25 Gibson website. If you're not an artist but still would like to provide some input, we have provided a space for that on the comment forms, so please fill those out. So here are a few pictures of other projects throughout the state that NMDOT has produced that have also been completed with that in mind, which is the local art component. And with that, I will give it back to Adriana.
Thank you, Alonzo. Thank you, Mike and Greg. That was a great presentation. I'm gonna move this chair real quick. I want to let you guys know how you guys can stay involved with this project, and there's several ways you can do that. First way is to submit your public comment. You can do that today via your comment form or by asking a question. You can visit i25gibson.com and you can fill out the comment form that will be available by tomorrow. You can email us at info@i25gibson.com. You can call us at the number on the screen, or you could even mail your comment form in on the address on the screen. If you haven't already, you can visit our website and you can sign up for email blasts and text message alerts. And that way, when we do start construction or we have our next public meeting, you'll be informed. All right, let's get into our Q&A.
The westbound turn lane of Avenida Cesar Chavez that goes onto I-25 North has no stop light. Depending on the time of day, it is a constant flow of fast traffic, very dangerous for pedestrians to cross, especially since the hit and run I suffered last May on Broadway. For me to step off the Avenida Cesar Chavez curb there as I pull my cart is very dangerous for me to cross at heavy traffic times of the day. I urge you to install a stoplight for that lane of traffic so pedestrians can safely cross. I know this location is not in the project, but it should be. And I urge you to take action and include it. Thank you.
Do you mind if I ask you a question? Help me make sure I understand the exact location. It's at Broadway and Cesar Chavez?
No. It's at Avenida Cesar Chavez, the westbound lane that proceeds onto I-25 North. As I say, at certain parts of the day, it's a constant flow of traffic. There's no stoplight there. They just...
So coming down the hill, Cesar Chavez, and then a right turn.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just open season on anybody trying to cross.
So I can speak to it. I'm glad thank you for repeating that. I appreciate it. So and I appreciate you pointing out that it's outside the project area. However, I will say this, that the department and the city all recognize that those free right turns are hazardous for both pedestrians and bicyclists.
Yep.
And it is actually their new policy to not do that anymore, right? So they're working to eliminate those free right turn movements so that you don't have that hazardous conflict.
But we need to rectify what already is.
I understand. I do understand. Thank you.
Can I steal the mic from you?
So you address that at a different
Yeah. So what he's pointing out, and sorry to go out of sequence there, but what he's pointing out is we're also studying, working on a project for our I-25 S-curve, which does include that location. So I hope we can address it there. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Question number 2.
So it's not really a question, it's more like the comment session, right? So for me, it's the plan for the future, right? We've been waiting 10 years to do something now, and then we're going to have to wait another 8 years for something to happen, right? So it's kind of like, we have an opportunity now to plan for the future. Plan for the future means to grow big. Don't think small, don't think minimize, I think go big, right? So this idea of a double lane, for pedestrian traffic with a raised sidewalk, great. Let's do it, right? Sure, the bike lane would work, but if we got the opportunity to do it now, we do it now, right? Another thing about it is that the frontage road, right? I see how we have this sort of frontage road on the west and the east. I say make it a 2-lane frontage road. Let's take advantage of potential businesses that go onto the frontage road, right? Sure, there's other complications, but we're planning for the future. And the biggest thing is about Mulberry. You got to do something about Mulberry. Getting out from the hotel or the Burger King, man, it's terrible to cross traffic right there. Something has to be done, right? maybe there's a way to merge, the freeway traffic with Mulberry or something, to put a light there or something, because that's something that definitely needs to change. I know it's not in the concept here, but it's right there and needs to change. And then about changing from the 3-lane to the 2-lane, I guess I'm okay with that. But the biggest thing is about those semis that come off of Broadway onto, to Gibson going east, right? They take 3 lanes, right? You can't cut them down to 2. It's just not going to work. That's all I have. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Just one comment on, I know you weren't really expecting an answer. One of the things we have to be cognizant of with Mulberry, and it has come up a number of times in discussion, is how close it is to the interchange itself, and that the operation of a traffic signal does not conflict with the operation of the interchange. So that's something that we've got to consider very carefully. But I do appreciate your comment. Thank you. Number three.
Right here.
Oh, I couldn't find you.
On this reconstruction, I suggest, or we need for you guys to include a wall for the traffic noise between Gibson and Cesar Chavez, especially because we're all neighborhoods on the west side of that I-25. So we need a wall for the noise. And we appreciate if you consider that.
Yeah, thank you. And believe it or not, you're not the first one we've heard that from. So it is an important thing that we have to consider and take into consideration. So in the next, I actually think it's in the next few weeks, we will be taking noise measurements from what we refer to as, it's kind of a callous term, but noise receptors along that side of I-25, basically adjacent to the homes, to measure what the existing noise is today. Then what we do, and this is actually part of the process that we go through for the environmental evaluation, we will take the proposed configuration as well as the anticipated traffic that we expect by year 2050 and model that and determine and estimate how much traffic we can expect with the proposed configuration for that traffic. Then there are a number of thresholds, and together with a specific noise policy that the Department of Transportation has, because it may sound obvious, but noise walls can be controversial. So they try to lean on the science as much as they possible. So we're going to evaluate that, analyze that against the policy. I would not be surprised at all if we see noise walls installed with this project, just because of, when I first moved to Albuquerque a couple of years ago, I lived right in the area, and I heard it from my bedroom window. So,
I was going to say, when they opened Sunport, that eliminated a lot of truck.
Oh, did it?
The heavy trucks, because they don't get off of Gibson anymore.
Yeah.
They get off at Sunport.
Yeah.
But we still have that traffic noise.
Yeah.
Because I know for myself, we live right west of the freeway, right there on Elm Street.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us do,
Yeah.
all the way up to Cesar Chavez.
No, thank you for that. It's an important thing. So appreciate it. Question 4.
I hope you'll all forgive me for not standing up. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned at the very first slide to improve bicycle and pedestrian facilities. What pedestrian and bicycle facilities do you have now that you're improving?
Well, you caught me, but they're not very good, are they? But
Well, I don't know where they exist.
yeah, fair enough, Francis. Fair enough, I agree with you.
I got to tell you that I care more about the people who live along I-25 than I care about bicyclists, because I don't see hundreds of bicyclists. And I'd like to know how many bicyclists come to you with, spend all this money so we can have a bicycle path through this area.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, it's to me, I put the people here first,
Okay.
the sound barriers and everything else. And my second comment is about the traffic that we have on South Broadway. And both the city and the state have been negligent about doing anything for us. And when you start working on this thing, we're going to have the same problems we've always had. Now, you guys have got to step up for a change and do something for the people in South Broadway and San Jose. And I'm serious about that. You do nothing. And not specifically you, but the state. You know, I don't want any excuses because there are people who live along this state road. We're different from Coors, you know, and I just get upset about this because I think we're just neglected. And I don't know whether it's a racial thing or it's a poverty thing, but South Broadway needs help. Thank you.
Agreed. And if construction takes place, you know, Broadway is always the first place that gets affected, right? If there's delays on I-25 or there's backups on I-25, Broadway is affected first, and I get that. I appreciate that. So I don't remember which number we're on. 5? All right, number 5.
Ready? Hi, Mike. Can you hear me? Is it on?
Yep.
Flip it around.
Like this?
Try that.
Hello? I have concerns about the manufactured home plant over here, Clayton Homes on San Jose. I transport those homes, and my concern is we go south on 47 and east on 500, which is Rio Bravo, and then northbound on I-25. And the concerns I have is that the majority of the homes that they build there, which is over 500 a year, go northbound. So when the Paseo del Norte project was going on, they allowed us 2 lanes all the time to get our homes transported that way. And the question I have is, will you be able to do something like that, you think? Would there be 2 lanes open both directions, mainly northbound?
Yeah, so I think, I'm just taking a guess, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. So, and I think you're talking about during construction, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we have is replacing those bridges while still maintaining traffic, right? So it's a bit of a trick. And so your concern is valid. And then going back to the last comment, anytime we affect traffic on I-25, it impacts Broadway, right? So we're trying to be cognizant of that. We're working through trying to understand the traffic so that we include the appropriate requirements in our design build RFP that a proposing team would have to meet. And one of those things, and you know, not to project necessarily on Gibson, but we worked on the project that's going to start on between Comanche Montgomery area. At least from the leadership of the Department of Transportation, their number one concern is to keep traffic on I-25 moving. So.
So probably 2 lanes open at least, hopefully.
So I appreciate your comment, so thank you.
6.
Number 6.
Oh, I was trying to get my steps in.
Hi, my name's Steve Plon, and I'm not a member of the East San Jose community, but I've been in this very cafeteria during the pandemic, and I was part of the team that gave COVID vaccinations, and my wife has been down here doing science curriculum on behalf of the Water Authority, so we are familiar with the neighborhood, but I'm here on behalf of Bike ABQ, and I'd like to thank the Department of Transportation for having a really transparent planning process for this, and we do appreciate having the barriers between the pedestrians and bicyclists on the one hand and cars on the other, because if you've ever been on a bicycle with cars going by at 40 miles an hour, it's kind of scary. You know, bicyclists obviously have to respect the pedestrians, but I really think that the Department of Transportation is doing a great job trying to incorporate active transportation into the process. That having been said, I think there's room for improvement. It's a long ways between Cesar Chavez and Gibson, and a long way between Gibson and Sunport. And one of the things that makes the I-40 corridor more pedestrian and bicycle friendly is that we have bike and pedestrian bridges about halfway between those intersections where the car traffic goes. And so I don't want to see the South Valley shortchanged in that respect. I'd like to see some bike lanes maybe at Smith, going over and at, I forget the other street that looked available. Smith down here between Gibson and Cesar Chavez, and then San Jose. I think San Jose used to go across to the other side before they built the freeway. Anyway, I'd like to see a bike and pedestrian bridges across mid-block or between there. Final point I'd like to make is expanding to 4 lanes in both directions. I can't say that I think that it's going to really benefit as all the traffic engineers know. There's this thing called induced traffic, and if you build it, they will come. And all it takes is about 5 years for the additional lane to be taken up, as has been demonstrated multiple times in places like Houston and Los Angeles. And that 4th lane, if you're going to build it, at least make it an HOV lane or a fast pass lane, so that you can have the people who are using it from down in the other county, I've forgotten the name of the other county down there coming into town, they at least have to pay for the benefit of using that. Thank you.
Thanks, appreciate, I don't think there was a question in there, but I do appreciate the input, thanks.
We got number 7.
Hello, guys. My name is Mike Patel. I'm with the hotel industry. I'm in the hotel business. My question regarding sign for the exit sign. So, like, give example, there is a Comanche exit we take, and there our property is in Candelaria. So we don't have a customer doesn't have a consumer doesn't have a sign that like property is in Candelaria. So can we just put something on the signage wise that add that exit Comanche or exit number that underneath that lodging, restaurant, or the gas station?
I just want to make sure I understand your question. So simply because to get to Candelaria, if you're going north, you have to get off
From the Comanche. If you're
well,
going south.
okay, if you go
If you're
past,
going
but, or
south.
you have to go get off before I-40 to continue, right? So you're just asking for, or your comment has to do with providing signing for those streets
Yes.
in advance? Okay, I understand.
Like
Thank you.
this particular map that Avenda Cesar Chavez, there is no gonna be future exit. So they're gonna take exit from Gibson. But then if you have business in Avenda Cesar Chavez, front is a hotel or restaurant. So if we can let the consumer know before they take exit Gibson, there is more businesses in Avenda Cesar Chavez also.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. The last question is you.
All right, cool.
Didn't forget about you.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Hi, I'm question number 8. So if you could turn back to the slide that shows I-25 at Gibson with Mulberry Street, my question's about that. I couldn't tell from that slide if it includes the Mulberry Street intersection or not. You'd mentioned previously there's some sort of talk about that. So I'm one of the commuters. I work at an office on University Boulevard just north of Gibson, and I go through that intersection every day. And I've had trouble getting out of Gibson Boulevard from Mulberry Street as well. So that's it. Oh, almost. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So is there any thoughts about just closing that off and making that a solid median so you can't turn west to go south? And are various options being discussed about what to do with Mulberry Street?
Yeah, I think the answer to your question is yes, but it's all in discussion at this point. So I don't have a specific answer for you tonight.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's why I was just wondering. So the project does include what to do with Mulberry.
Yeah. Either the city or the state, but both are talking about it. So
Okay, that's
yeah,
good.
one way or the other. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
That's it?
You can have it. Turn it off. It's on.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. That's some valuable input for us to move forward. Please take the next, I don't know what time it is, hour, maybe half an hour, and walk around, talk with our presenters. If you have not signed in, please do sign in over here at the front. Bo's raising his hand. You can sign in with him. Don't forget, if you filled out a comment form, to drop it off in the box over there, or you can mail it to us later. And then if you do need assistance with anything else, just find someone with a name tag and we'll be happy to help you. Everybody, thank you for coming and have a great evening.